Hello, welcome to Space Engineers. This is going to be a tutorial on how to use PAM or Path Auto Miner. This tutorial is about how to use it using the LCD screen. This is going to assume that you have a ship that is already built and set up, all hotkeys and blocks in place. I will be doing a tutorial later on how to turn a ship into a PAM ship, but for this tutorial we'll only be talking about how to use it. So when you first start, you'll have your LCD, which is this one here, and to begin with you'll want to be connected to your station, your grid, your ship, whatever you want your miner to be returning to. This is your home connector. So what we'll do is we'll go to our first option here, which is record path and set home. When you select this one, it will start recording. Now, as we see here, it goes home was set. It has detected that we're connected to this detector, and that is now our home. That is where it will return to. So when we disconnect and we fly to wherever we want to mine, so whatever ore patch you have already scouted out, the path that you set now is the path that it will always fly through. So it is important that you record the entire path all the way there, so that way there are no hiccups. But once you are at position, so we'll just go right here, you'll want to sort of park up just above where you want to go, and then you'll want to align so that your ship is flat to the surface that you want to mine with. On a planet, you'll probably need to be at an angle if you're not using a vertical miner such as this one. But how PAM will navigate while mining is it will detect that your drills are forward, and it will move left and right, up and down. So you don't want it to crash into anything during its operation. But once you're in position and you're clear, you'll want to stop recording your path, and you'll move down to the next option, which is set up mining job. Now in this one, this is where we'll set the parameters for the job itself. So we'll have our first option, which is start new job, which will immediately begin based on the parameters below. Change current job. This, I have found through testing, it sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. I don't use it. I would rather just set up new jobs, but you're free to experiment with this one. Now, as we move down to width and height, so this is how many holes it's going to dig in each direction. So obviously width is your left to right, height is your up and down. So on this one, like we see width 2, width 3, width 4, that's how many holes left and right it's going to do. And with the height, same thing. How many holes? Like if we go 5, we'll go 5 up and down. For, on this one, a total of 20 holes. When we move down and we see depth, we'll just quickly set this one down. So depth on default mode, this is how deep it will go. Once it reaches this depth, it will consider that hole done, and it will reverse out and move on to the next one. You can set this as high or as low as you need it to, or we can use depth mode. So in this one we have default, which is just your static depth, or we can go auto, or what this means is when it's digging down, if it's, say, you've set it to 40 meters, or in my case 70 meters, it reaches that depth, but it is still detecting that it's mining ore, so you're still getting ore through your drills. It will continue moving forward until it is only detecting stone, at which point it will stop, reverse out, and move on to the next hole. The other mode we have is auto plus stone, so as long as it's detecting ore and stone, it will keep moving forward. There is an exception with this particular setting of ice. In this particular mode, say you're on your roper and you're digging through and you've set it to this, it will detect, once it stops detecting ore and stone, it will stop mining, and it will no longer consider ice as an ore in this setting. So it will not continue drilling through ice. Underneath that one, we have our start position, which we have two options. We have center and we have top left. So top left is it will start at the top leftmost hole, and it will move left to right, up and down based on, it's basically like a typewriter at that point. Center means it will start at the centermost hole, and it will dig out in a spiral around that. It's more convenient when you're doing things such as asteroids in this mode, because you know where the ore is, and you don't need to get all those edges. You just need to mine the center and then just go around a spiral until all that ore is done, and then you can stop it. So yeah, that's a fun one. When you click start new job, it's going to immediately start. We are going to stop that one. On that previous screen, you've seen that it had behavior settings, and underneath that it had next hole. Next hole is simply stop drilling the one you're in, move on to the next one. Behavior settings we'll go into in a little bit. Underneath that one we have continue job. So if for whatever reason you have stopped mining that particular job and you've, say, returned it to home or moved it out of place, continue job means that it will fly back to the job position and continue where it left off. It won't start fresh, it will just continue where it was at. Rather handy, especially if you, say, had to return to your ship because somebody nasty showed up and you had to deal with them and then you wanted your drone to go back out. That's what this setting's for. It's one of the best parts of PAM in my opinion. Underneath that one, we have fly to home position. So that one is pretty self-explanatory. It will just fly home. Underneath that one, we've got fly to job position, in which case when instead of flying home, it will just fly back to where it's supposed to be mining. So if you've moved it or it's currently at home for whatever reason, you can fly back to your job position and set up a new job there. Or just tell it to continue. Keep in mind that continue job, if you're docked at home, will fly you back out just like fly to job position and will continue where it left off. You don't need to fly to job position and then press continue job. You can just use the continue job feature. So when we go down to the behavioral settings, this was the setting that we've seen in the mining. When we are active on a job, this is one of the options that appear. You can just access it from the menu as well. So on here, this is where we can set up parameters for inventory, fuel, all of that sort of stuff. So on here we have max load, so mine is set 90%. That is 90% of maximum cargo inventory reached. Once it reaches 90%, it will return home. Underneath that, we have weight limit on. This is not a setting for smaller ships. This is more for your larger grid ships that have massive amounts of cargo but not a lot of thrust. You can set a weight limit on where it will calculate your power to weight ratio of your thrusters basically. Once it reaches a certain level, it will dedicate that as your 90% instead of 90% of all cargoes filled. That way your thrusters can still work and you're not slow as a tortoise. On smaller ships, as long as you've got enough thrust to maneuver it, it's not that big of an issue. Ejection, this is for use of your ejectors, so we have many options in here. So ejection off means it's just going to mine everything and take it all back, stone everything. If we change it to the first setting, which is current position stone, it is going to stop in position once it's filled to its threshold, in this case 90%, and it's going to then attempt to eject all of the stone in its inventory to free up room for more minerals. We also have stone plus ice, in which case it will also eject all of the ice. And then we have drop position. Drop position means it's going to return to the job site. So the initial spot that you were in when you started the job, and it's going to drop all of the stone there. This is most noticeably handy when you're on planets and you don't want those boulders in the mining shaft itself, because as we all know, that will potentially severely damage your ship. This will fly out of the hole and drop it at a safe distance wherever you've set. So same thing with this one, stone and ice. And then we have the third option, which is in motion. This means that it will basically turn your ejectors on and keep them on while it's moving. So while it's flying to base, while it's flying from base, and while it's mining, it will constantly be ejecting stone. This can be quite dangerous depending on your build. So yeah, take that one as you will. Same with this one, stone and ice. And then ejection off. Toggle sorters is simply for if you have a sorter on your connector that connects to the base. This means that they will turn that sorter on to try and pull everything out of your inventory and push it into the base. I prefer to use systems that are on the base itself as opposed to having a sorter on this particular vessel, as I would prefer to pull the resources out of the miner rather than push them in. Underneath that we've got unload ice. Now if you have unload ice off, it will try and hold on to every last little bit of ice in its inventory. It will not unload. Even with the sorter, it will try and keep as much ice aboard as possible. Obviously, this is for hydrogen-based miners, so you can have a stockpile of ice aboard to refuel in flight. Underneath that, we have uranium. So this is how much uranium in your reactors. If you don't have any reactors, it won't. This won't affect you. But if you have reactors aboard, this will try and keep a minimum amount of uranium in those reactors. In this case, I've set mine to 5 kilograms. So in my reactor aboard, it will try and maintain 5 kilograms of uranium. If it goes below that 5 kilograms of uranium, it will immediately stop what it's doing and fly home in an attempt to get more uranium. Keep in mind, PAM is not an inventory manager in the sense that it won't automatically suck uranium and gets out of your home connector into itself. You will need to do that through engineering on the station or on the miner using sorters, or in my case, I just use an inventory script to manage that for me. Battery is the same. It will go to a minimum charge level of your batteries, and once it reaches that threshold, it will then try and return home. Hydrogen, again, same thing. Once it reaches the minimum amount of hydrogen in the tanks, keep in mind this will not calculate ice in O2H2 generators. This will only calculate ice in tanks. Once it reaches its minimum threshold, it will attempt to return home in order to refuel. Same as with the uranium, it will not automatically stockpile your tanks. You will need to have other systems in place for that. There is an exception to that on hydrogen. When it passively returns, it will attempt to stockpile your tanks in order to refill your hydrogen very quickly, but that is only while it is doing normal functionality. So when it reaches its minimum 20% threshold, when it redocks, for some reason it doesn't always engage that particular feature. You will have to do that bit manually in that situation. After that, we have when done. So this is what happens when it's finished its mining job. We can have it return home in this setting. The other setting is stop, in which case it will return to its mining position and it will just stop and wait for further commands. On damage, we have multiple options here. So if it takes any kind of block damage, we can have it return home. We can have it fly to the job position. We can have it simply stop, or we can have it ignore the damage. Moving on after that one, we have the advanced option. So in here, we have the drill inventory balancing. So what that will do is while it's mining, when all cargoes are filled and there's only inventory left in the drills, it will try and take as much resources from the drills that have too much ore into it and put it into the drills that don't have as much. So your outer drills that have more area and less competition for resources that fill up quicker, it's going to try and take the ore out of them and put it in the drills that are more clustered together in the center and not getting as much ore, so you can get as much as possible per trip. Underneath that one, we've got enable drills forward and backwards. So that just means that while it's mining through the drill holes, it will have its drills on while going forward and into the hole, and backwards while it's coming out. That just allows for a smoother hole and potentially less chances of it being snagged on the walls. You can disable that and have it as only on forward, so once you're reversing, it turns it off. Very handy for lightweight builds that don't have a great deal of power. It will save a little bit and allow it to mine a little bit longer. Now, work speed forward. This is the speed that it will attempt to reach while drilling forward. Now, keep in mind, vanilla drills don't mine that quickly. So, with the drills hard pressed against the voxels, most times it will be traveling at 0.5 to 0.8 meters per second. But it will always attempt to reach 1.5 meters per second. It also means that, say it's halfway through a hole and it's filled up, so it's returned home, dropped off that ore, and it's on its way back, it's going to fly at 1.5 meters forward into that drill hole until it connects with the stone. Keep in mind, it won't stop just short, it's going to keep going at the speed you set. So if you set this too high, it potentially can impact the rock wall at the bottom with enough force to break your drills. So try and keep that one on a little bit of the slow side, is my personal opinion. Now, work speed backwards is how quickly you want it to reverse. Now, the default for this one is 2.5, but it can go all the way up to 10 meters per second. So if you're confident that your mining ship has enough clearance that while it's reversing out, it's not going to impact on the voxels, feel free to set that up much higher. Or if you have a very, very snug build, set that a little bit lower just to be on the safe side. Underneath that, we have acceleration. How PAM operates is it turns your inertial dampeners off, and it will basically use thrust override to control itself. So acceleration means that it will only use 70% of the maximum thrust available in your thrusters. You can set this to 100% absolutely. I would not recommend that, because if you get caught with a little bit of desync or something along those lines and PAM detects that it needs to immediately stop, this gives you, because I've set it 7%, I've now got 30% additional thrust in order to come to a screeching halt faster. This does not mean that it will only travel at 70% max speed. It will reach maximum speed, if available to it. Width overlap and height overlap is simply while you're drilling, if you have drill heads such as my one here, where the corners are cut off, and it's not a perfect square, if you don't want the pillars, for lack of better definition, the pillars that are left behind, you can use the overlap to force it to drill a little bit further into the hole beside it and just eliminate those pillars. It is less efficient overall, but you don't get those pillars and you get all of the resources without having to do anything extra. That's how that one works. Underneath that, we have info. Now, a lot of this info is available while it's mining. I will show that in a minute. I've just turned it off because the shaking of the vehicle while it's mining is a bit crazy. But on here, it gives you just a quick snapshot of which version of PAM you're using, how much inventory you currently have. So I'm at 0% on shipload. Uranium, it tells me how much I have in what reactor. Battery, where that's at. I've got no hydrogen on, and I've received no damage. On here, it's just... this is more for remote controlling. We will not be going into that on this one, on this tutorial. I'll be going into that on our building tutorial, which I'll be doing later. And then underneath that we have help, which is basically just a quick little checklist on how to use PAM. So dock your ship to the station, select a record, fly to where you want to go, stop recording, align ship to where you want to mine, and then start the job. So hopefully this helped you. I will be doing a tutorial after this on how to turn a ship into a PAM drone, plus other secret little features of PAM that you may not have known about or may know about but want some more information. That will be in upcoming tutorials. So have fun, stay safe.